All right, would you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you can lower your hand. If you'll state your name for the record and please spell your last name.
My name is Tiggy Ogery, Augery.
All right, state you may proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Ogery. Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Hi, my name is Tiggy Ogery. I am Nicholas Ogery's wife, previously known as Nicholas Swain.
Where are you from, Tiggy?
I'm originally from Arizona, but I grew up overseas, so I didn't come to San Antonio until I was much older.
And when did you meet Officer Swain or Ogery?
We met in the military. I was in the Navy for 6 years, so we were both Spanish and French linguists in the military.
And at some point, did you two get married?
Yes, we got married in 2019.
And were you with him when he joined the San Antonio Police Academy?
Yes, I was.
Was that a big deal for him?
Yes, I knew ever since the day I met him that he wanted to be a police officer. He had been telling me that ever since he was 8 years old, he wanted to be a police officer. It was a calling for him.
So when he went through the academy and was able to become a certified police officer, was that something that y'all celebrated?
Yes, I knew that it came with a certain degree of risk, but I was very happy for him that he was able to achieve this goal that he had wanted since he was a child.
You said that you knew that it came with a certain degree of risk. Tell the jury about kind of your initial, I guess, thought process when it came to being the wife of a police officer. Did it feel real to you that you could potentially lose him one day?
When he became a police officer, of course I knew that it came with the risk of him being hurt or worse. But I think that it didn't feel real to me in the moment. It felt like these sorts of things happen to other people. And my husband had won all kinds of awards for being most physically fit Marine, best cadet, most best Marine, all kinds of things like that. And so I think I looked at him like he was invincible. And I don't think I realized that until he was seriously hurt that he wasn't.
And you and Officer Swain had a child at some point, is that right?
Yes, we have a 5-year-old. His name is Tristan.
Was he proud that his dad was a cop?
Yes, very. Yeah, my little boy loved anything having to do with lights, sirens, fire trucks, police cars. So he was very proud to have a police officer for a papa.
Okay. So you mentioned that it didn't feel real to you at first. I guess not necessarily the possibility, but the likelihood that he could be seriously hurt. Tell the jury about the night you found out that he was shot.
I had been out. I was in school at the time, and so I was going through a lot of final exams and things like that. And so I had been out. My husband was in the habit of calling me whenever he was going to be late coming home, but I hadn't received a call from him. But I thought that maybe he had just been held up, and so I didn't really think anything of it. But it was late, and I had just put my little boy to bed. He was 3 at the time, and I was kind of tidying up the house and getting ready to go to bed myself and checking my phone to see if Nick had texted me when I got a knock at the door, and that almost never happened. So immediately I felt like something was wrong. I answered the door, and there was a police officer standing there, and I thought my first initial thought was like I had done something wrong. Clearly, I had made too much noise, or I had left my trash out too long, or something. And the first thing the officer said to me was, "Are you Mrs. Swain?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "Your husband has been shot." And the first thing I did was laugh in disbelief. And I asked him where, and he said he didn't know. I asked him if he was going to be okay.
On a quiet evening, Judy Augeri's world was shattered. A knock at the door revealed her husband, Officer Swain, had been shot. In disbelief, she faced the impossible, rushing her young son into the unknown, heading to the hospital, and confronting fear and uncertainty. That night marked the start of a long, painful journey for her family.
And he said he didn't know. And I had to go and wake up my little boy, scoop him out of bed, and he was so excited to see a police officer standing in our living room. And I tried to gather up as many things as I can. I remember my hands were shaking uncontrollably. We got into the police car, and Officer Alvarez, who was our police advocate, he turned his lights and sirens on, and my little boy was sitting in my lap in the back of the police car, just beaming with excitement because there were lights and sirens, and he was so excited, and he's asking me, "Mama, what's going on? Where are we going?" And I had to tell him, I don't know what's going on, just it's going to be okay. And when we got to the hospital, it was just an absolute blur. There were so many people around. I had brought a stroller for my little boy. I strapped him in, but he was trying to play and asking all kinds of questions, and people were trying to give me all kinds of information. I didn't have anyone to call to watch my little boy. So a very kind fellow officer offered to watch him that night because I had no one else to call.
So when you got to the hospital, what were you made aware of was going on with your husband?
I don't even remember who told me. I feel like information filtered through many people. But they had told me that he had been shot. I didn't know how many times at that moment. Eventually I learned that he had been shot twice, that actually penetrated his body. They told me all kinds of different things. I heard many opinions from many doctors. At first I heard he was lucky to still have a hand at all. Then I heard that he was lucky he hadn't slipped into a coma, that he was lucky he hadn't been outright killed. I heard that he would have to have many surgeries, and that he would have to relearn how to walk again, and that he may never regain use of his right hand again.
How long were you from the moment the knock on your door came and you were told he was shot, but they didn't know how bad, until you were told he's alive and going to make it, but it's going to be a hard, long road? Do you know how long that was?
It felt like both hours and hours and minutes at the same time. I think I lost all perception of time. I think it was maybe an hour and a half.
Okay. How were you feeling in that time?
In shock, numb. I remember lots of people were asking me if I was okay and commenting on my lack of emotional response at the time. And I think I was holding all of my emotion in until I felt safe and things felt okay, because at that moment I felt like I needed to be strong for my son.
Is that what you were trying to do? Not let him see you, I guess, freak out, for lack of a better word?
Yes.
Was there a time when you finally felt free to freak out?
Yes, I think it didn't come until Nick went home.
Okay. And what was that moment like?
When Nick first came home, the first thing he did was he went into our guest room that I had prepared for him. He closed the door and he sobbed for hours. And I think that was the first time that it really felt real to me, because I had never really heard him cry like that before. My husband's a very strong person and a very prideful man, and I had never heard something so raw come from him. And I think that's the moment that it really felt real.
Do you remember the moment that your son saw him for the first time?
Yes.
What was that like?
Nick and I talked a lot about whether or not it would be healthy for Tristan to see him in the hospital. And ultimately, because he was asking me so many questions about where's Papa, is Papa going to be okay, I decided to take him to the hospital and let him see Nick in the hospital. And we took him to the room, and he's, was 3 at the time, so he didn't fully understand the magnitude of what had happened, but he did understand that Papa had needles all over in his arms, and that he had a bandage on his hand, and we had to be careful not to hurt him while he was trying to give him hugs. And we showed him the wounds because he asked to see. And I kind of lifted up the bandages so that Tree could see the.
At the hospital, Judy witnessed the severity of Nick's injuries. Multiple surgeries, tubes, and wounds too painful to bear alone. She became his full-time caregiver, navigating wound care, medications, and physical therapy. Her young son tried to make sense of it all, while Judy fought to stay strong, masking her own fear and grief for the sake of her family.
The wound in Nick's leg, it was a huge wound, and it had been sewn up at that point. And there were tubes leading out of it with blood, sucking out blood and fluid, and it was gruesome. And I felt like in that moment it was important for Tree to see that because he had been asking me a lot.
When he got home, what were his physical limitations?
So many. He was not able to walk without a cane for a long time. He was not able to bathe himself. He was not able to cook. He was almost bedridden for at least several months afterwards. He was also on so much medication that he wasn't himself. He was sedated. And when he wasn't sedated and sleeping, he was not himself. He was angry. He was frustrated at not being able to move around. My husband at the time was 29 when this happened. And for me to watch him at the prime of his life go through something that was so physically debilitating, it's very difficult. I was the primary caretaker for our son. I cooked, I cleaned, I took care of him for months and months.
You were in school at the time this happened, correct?
Yes.
What were you in school for?
I was getting my BA in art at the time.
So when this happened, did you have to make some adjustments with your educational plans?
Yes. A few days after it happened, I had to drop out of my university completely because it was very apparent that I was going to need to take care of Nick full time. I was out of school for a year until I was able to go back and finish my degree.
What kinds of things did you have to do for Nick in that time that you were his full-time caregiver?
I think the thing that comes to mind the most when I think about that time is wound care. There was a lot of wound care multiple times a day. Every day I was changing his bandages. Nick was not able to do it because every time he would take off his bandages from his wounds, he was getting nauseous and lightheaded from seeing the amount of blood and infection and necrotic black skin and the smell. And he wasn't able to do it alone. So I was the person that was changing his wound care. Eventually it became sort of a routine. After a few months, we could, put on some music and he would lay down and we could laugh about it. But it was, I've never had to do something like that in my life. And it was a very intense experience, especially after taking him to appointments where he had to have necrotic dead skin removed for long periods of time. He was going through these very painful procedures where afterwards the wound needed to be washed out especially well so it didn't get infected even worse. Those were particularly bad times.
You mentioned that he couldn't do the wound care himself when it came to taking the bandages off because of the physical issues, but when he would take the bandages off and look at the wounds, would it affect him emotionally and psychologically as well?
Yes.
Explain that to the jury.
There were multiple times when I had to help him take showers. We found a shower chair that he could sit down in the shower because the medication and the pain was making him so lightheaded that it wasn't safe for him to stand in the shower. And he wasn't able to submerge the wounds in a bathtub. And he could barely stand the pain of any water even touching his leg in any way at all anyway. But when he stood up and saw the wounds, every time he would get into the shower, I could tell he was trying really hard to hold it together in front of me and not cry and not get frustrated. But there were times when I did see him look nauseous or look like he was going to even pass out. There were a few times when I had to support him while we were getting into the shower.
You said earlier on in your testimony that when you very first got back home, he locked himself in the room and cried, and you hadn't really ever seen that from him before. Did that happen on more than one occasion during his recovery?
Many
Anytime?
many times. Yes.
How many times prior to this incident would you say you've ever seen him cry in your entire relationship?
No.
So you're helping take care of him, wound care, showers, eating, you know.
Life at home became a battlefield of care and recovery. Judy assisted Nick with eating, bathing, and movement while juggling her studies and raising their son. The trauma reshaped their lives, physically, emotionally, and psychologically. Every small victory came with struggle as they endured pain, sleepless nights, and the heavy weight of uncertainty, hoping for healing and normalcy.
We can eat.
Yes. He regained some use of his hand after a few months. We were constantly changing out the support, the hard support on his arm. And at first, there were pins and screws in his arm that were being controlled almost like by strings, almost looked like a puppet. After that was taken off, he had more independence. But that was not for several months. And so for a long time, I was helping him eat, helping him bathe, helping him get dressed, anything really that he would need to do on his own normally, I was helping him do.
And taking him to his doctor's appointments and physical therapy?
Yes, he was not safe to drive. He was on so much medication for almost a year. He was not cleared to drive. So I was driving him to multiple doctor's appointments every day.
What was the physical therapy part of this like?
It was intense at first. He was very, very fortunate to have been admitted into the CFI. It's like the Center for Intrepid on Fort Sam Houston, the base. They catered towards veterans who've lost limbs. The nature of his injuries were deemed severe enough that he was admitted there, and he was going there multiple times a week. At first, it was every day. And I was driving him there, and it was anywhere from 1 hour to 4 hour sessions every day.
So, as far as the traumatic effect of this on you emotionally as his wife, how has that been on you?
Incredibly difficult. I talked about how before this, I had kind of looked at him like he was invincible, and I had a sense of innocence, I think, and I didn't realize how much I was relying on that until it was taken away from me. And this experience has felt like a huge loss of innocence for me and for my son. I felt like I can no longer look at the world the same way, and I have trouble sleeping. In the beginning, after this happened, I had to go to the urgent care multiple times because I was having chest pain and heart palpitations, and the doctors told me that it was because of stress. And so they put me on, anti-anxiety medication that were short term. But I feel that I have been irrevocably changed fundamentally as a person because of this event. I started loud noises. I'm unable to sleep most nights soundly. And I have just a deep distrust of the world now. I can no longer watch movies because the violence is everywhere. And I notice it. There are lots of times when I hear people watching movies or playing video games or reading books, and I want to just cover my ears and scream to block out, because I just can't really handle any more violence. I can't handle it anymore.
What about your son?
My son, he's taken it hard, but in his own way. When it happened, he was 3, and he did not fully understand what had happened. And at first he kind of was asking me questions about it, and we tried to be as honest with him as possible. But when he started going to a different school, he was having outbursts of anger in school. And I tried to talk to the staff and they just weren't very understanding or about what had happened. And they wanted us to have him diagnosed and they wanted us to put him on medication to kind of calm him down. And so I tried to take him to a child psychologist that was with Battling Minds, who is affiliated with the police department. And I took him for about 4 or 5 sessions. And every time the therapist or the psychiatrist would try and talk to him about, you know, what about your papa? How do you feel about what happened to him? He would start having an unbelievable outburst. He would start screaming, throwing things, crying. And the sessions were making him worse at school. And so I stopped bringing him. But his teachers were telling me that he was saying all kinds of very disturbing things. And still, he's in kindergarten now, but still, I have a dialogue with his teacher. And she knows what has happened because he has told her. And he makes comments all the time like, oh, you know, Miss Greer, we can't do that because a bad guy might come and shoot us. Or Miss Greer, be very careful because bad guys are everywhere and you never know when they might come and shoot you. Or we can't go to this place because somebody might try and kill us. You know, he's constantly saying things like that. And every time it absolutely breaks my heart.
How has this affected your marriage?
I think when you go through something like this with somebody, and Nick and I had always had a very strong relationship before this, but inevitably something like this is going to cause strain, and it did cause strain between us. But ultimately, I think that we've come out stronger because of it. But yes, it has caused a lot of strain, especially in the beginning when, you know, we weren't able to be physically intimate, which it causes a lot of distance between you when something like that happens. And because of my inability to, I guess, bounce back from something like this, it's been very difficult.
Did you want him to go back to work when he was cleared to?
Of course not. No.
Did that cause fighting?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I have spent over 2 years trying to convince him not to go back, that this is something that he wants to do. It is his purpose in life, and I don't want to be the thing that stands in his way of doing what he wants to do.
So how do you feel every time he walks out the door with that uniform on?
A sense of impending doom, impending dread. I constantly am cataloging things in my mind to remember so that I can use them later. You know, if I ever need to talk about him or write an obituary or something, I feel like I can't ever relax because I'm constantly waiting for another phone call or another knock at the door. And I feel like every happy moment with him is on borrowed time.
What would you like the members of the jury to know about how you feel about what should happen to Jesus Pop?
To be honest, I have not really had time to even think about the person who did this and what should be done to hold him accountable because I've been so busy just reeling from the shock of what's happened that I just haven't had the capacity to even think about him. But now that this trial has finally happened, I've had time to think about it, and I just want him to be held accountable for what he's done, not just to my husband, but to me and my innocent little boy who's now going to be changed for the rest of his life because of one action that he took.
Nothing for everyone.
All right, defense.
No questions, Judge.
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
Do you think by the statement?
She's excused, Judge.
All right, the rule has been invoked. What that means, you're not allowed to discuss your testimony with anyone or view anything about this trial until the conclusion of the trial. Do you understand? All right, if you remove the square microphone and you're excused. State, call your next witness.
The state calls Luis Lopez.